All right, so let's get right into it. We are going to tackle one of the most famous, maybe the most famous ethical puzzle ever. But it's got this high-tech twist now that takes it from, a philosophical question you'd hear in a classroom to a real-world split-second decision that an AI has to make. Yeah, when you strip everything else away, it all boils down to this one kind of brutal question. What do you do when there just aren't any good options? And look, this is not just some riddle anymore. This is a problem that, right now, people are trying to code into our machines. Okay, so to really get a grip on the challenge facing AI engineers today, we've got to go back to the beginning, back to the original thought experiment that kicked this whole thing off. So, picture this. You're just standing there, next to some train tracks, and then you see it, a trolley, completely out of control, barreling down the track. And up ahead, 5 people tied to it, totally oblivious. You get that sinking feeling of panic. You're helpless. But then you spot it. There's a lever right next to you. And right there, that's the choice. It's a single, deliberate action. If you pull that lever, the trolley switches tracks. You save those 5 people. Simple, right? But on that other track, there's one person. And by pulling that lever, you are consciously choosing to send that trolley hurtling towards them. You're no longer a bystander. You're directly involved. So what's the call? Do you pull the lever, sacrifice one person to save 5, or do you do nothing and just let events play out? See, the really hard part here isn't what you do. It's why you do it. That justification, your moral reasoning, that's everything. And that's the part we have to somehow translate into code. All right, let's leave the dusty old railway tracks behind and fast forward to a modern highway. Because this isn't just a thought experiment for philosophers in armchairs anymore. Oh no, this is being debated right now by programmers in Silicon Valley. And this is really the key. For a machine, there's no time to sit and ponder the ethics of it all. There's no moral debate. The decision has to be baked in, pre-programmed. It's basically an if-then statement for an impossible situation, and it has to be executed in, milliseconds. Okay, so here's the modern version. Forget the lever. Now we've got a self-driving car. It's driving itself, you're not even in it, and then disaster. The brakes fail, a total catastrophic malfunction. And at that exact horrible moment, a group of pedestrians steps out onto the road. A crash is going to happen. It's completely unavoidable. The car's AI instantly analyzes everything, and its processor sees only 2 paths, 2 outcomes. Option 1, stay the course and collide with a group of pedestrians. Option 2, swerve, making an intentional move and collide with a single person on the sidewalk. And that is the billion-dollar question. How do you program a car to make a moral choice? Because you can't just leave that part of the code blank. A decision has to be made. So, which human ethical framework, which moral code do we pick to tell the machine what to do? Well, to even begin to answer that, we need to look at 2 big competing schools of thought that have guided human ethics for centuries. I like to think of them as the 2 main operating systems for making a moral decision. First up, you've got utilitarianism. And this one is basically a numbers game. It's all about logic and kind of moral math. You just weigh the outcomes and pick the one that creates the most good for the most people. So, saving 5 lives at the cost of 1, from a purely utilitarian standpoint, that's not just the right choice, it's the necessary one. But then there's deontology. And this way of thinking basically says, whoa, hold on a second. It argues that the consequences aren't the only thing that matters. In fact, some actions, like the act of intentionally killing someone, are just flat out wrong, period. No matter the outcome. It's all about following moral rules and duties, not about calculating the results. So you can see the clash right here, right? It's a fundamental conflict in how you'd program the logic. Utilitarianism is all about the outcome. You could say the ends justify the means. Deontology, on the other hand, is all about the action itself. Some things are just always wrong. You're stuck between calculating the best result versus following a moral rule that you can't break. So okay, let's plug this into our car. A car running on a utilitarian operating system would do the math. 5 is more than 1. Therefore, the logical and ethical choice is to swerve. It's horrible, it's tragic, but it's a mathematically sound decision designed to minimize the total loss of life. Okay, but what about a car programmed with deontology? It could come to a totally different conclusion. Its core code might have a rule, like rule number 1, do not take a direct action that intentionally causes harm. And swerving, that's a direct intentional action. So the car has to stay its course, even though the outcome is objectively worse. It's just following the rules. And this is what makes it so tough. Big global studies, like MIT's Moral Machine Project, have shown that people all over the world have wildly different instincts on this, blending these two philosophies. There's no single rule that everyone agrees on, which makes picking one for every car a massive challenge. So the car follows its programming, it makes the choice, and the unthinkable happens. And that's when the next question pops up, and believe me, it's just as complicated and legally messy as the first one. Who's to blame?
I mean, think about it. In a world where machines are making these life-or-death calls based on code we wrote, our whole concept of responsibility just starts to fall apart. There's no legal precedent for a robot making a moral choice. We are literally making this up as we go along.
And this really gets to the heart of the legal chaos. Who do you hold accountable? The owner, who was basically just a passenger and had zero control? The car company that built and sold the car? What about the specific programmer who actually wrote that one line of code? Or do you blame the government that said these cars were safe for the road in the first place? Every single one of those options is a legal and ethical minefield, and there are no easy answers. So, where does that leave us? As we look down the road, literally, this whole debate forces us to ask some really deep questions. And they're not just about machines, are they? They're about us.
Because at the end of the day, this isn't really a technical problem about cars and code. It's a human one. In trying to teach a machine how to be ethical, we're being forced to figure out and define with absolute clarity what our own values truly are. We're literally programming a mirror.
And that brings us to the final and maybe the most important question of all. Who gets to decide? Do we let a handful of programmers in a lab make this call? Do we leave it up to corporate boardrooms? Or is this a conversation that every single one of us needs to be a part of? Because the moral code for our machines is being written as we speak, and whatever we decide is going to define the road ahead for everyone.